Now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Casa D18 Studios Channel and another episode of Albumversearies, the show that goes track by track on albums that are celebrating an anniversary. Now, today's artist was born in Berkeley, California, and started his first band in 1959 while he was still in junior high school. The band was called the Blue Velvets. In 1964, the Blue Velvets signed a record deal with Fantasy Records, and unbeknownst to them, the record label decided to change their name to the Gollywogs. Now, the Gollywogs would record 7 singles for Fantasy Records. Unfortunately, none of them were successful. Have you heard of the Gollywogs? I hadn't. And today's artist went on, did his time, serving our country in the Army Reserve from 1966 to 1968, and the Gollywogs were actually able to release an entire album in late 1967. However, in 1968, the Gollywogs would change their name once again, this time to the name that they are best known as, Creedence Clearwater Revival. That's right, today's feature artist is none other than the CCR frontman, John Fogerty. Now, CCR had 9 top 10 singles, which include Have You Ever Seen the Rain, which peaked at number 8, Sweet Hitchhiker, which went up to number 6, Up Around the Bend, which went to number 4, and Run Through the Jungle. Both those songs actually topped out at number 4. Fortunate Son went to number 3. Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, Green River, Traveling Band, Who Will Stop the Rain, Looking Out My Back Door, and Long as I Can See the Light, all of which were the proverbial bridesmaid as they only peaked at number 2. Hard to believe here that none of those classic CCR tracks made it to number 1. They also collected 8 gold albums between 1968 and 1972, and they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Now, since CCR parted ways in 1972, John Fogerty has had a successful solo career, which continues to this day. He was listed on Rolling Stone magazine's list of 100 greatest songwriters, coming in at number 40, and the list of 100 greatest singers, where he ranked number 72. Today's album is Centerfield, and it's celebrating its 40th anniversary today. It's actually John Fogerty's 3rd solo album. It spawned the hit singles The Man Down the Road, which is Fogerty's only top 10 hit as a solo artist, Rock and Roll Girls, and the title track, Centerfield. Fogerty actually played all of the instruments on the album himself, thanks to the process of overdubbing, and the RIAA has certified the album double platinum, which is 2 million in album sales. A 25th anniversary edition was released on June 29th, 2010, and it features the original album, digitally remastered, and adds 2 bonus tracks, both of which were B-sides to 45s released in 1986. The first of which is a cover of Rockin' Sidney Simeon's hit song, My Toot Toot, which was taken from Fogerty's Change in the Weather single, which was released in 1986, and actually features Sidney himself on the accordion. And then 1950s R&B doo-wop song, I Confess, originally by Teddy Van and Nathaniel Nathan, which was taken from Fogerty's Eye of the Zombie sequel, which was also released from 1986. Now, the album kicks off with The Old Man Down the Road, which, as I previously stated, was Fogerty's only top 10 single as a solo artist. It actually peaked at number 10 on Billboard's Hot 100, and it did end up going to number 1 on the Billboard Top Rock Tracks charts. It cracked the top 20 in Austria and Canada, where it peaked at number 12, New Zealand, where it did slightly better, topping out at number 11, and Australia, where it hit number 10, just like it did here in the States. The Old Man Down the Road was, in fact, the lead single for the album, in addition to being the kickoff track, and it was released on December 6th, 1984, just ahead of the album's release. In my personal opinion, it's a fantastic opening track. Rolling Stone critic Paul Evans even regards the song as functional swamp rock. And Billboard magazine said that it shows that Fogerty is still able to infuse a pulsing beat with deep swamp mysteriousness. Heck, even Cashbox weighed in, calling it a hard-hitting roots rocker which wastes no notes and pulls no punches. Now, Cashbox is something I only recently learned about by watching the Professor of Rock, Adam Reeder, who, as I've noticed in some of my previous videos, was actually my inspiration for this series. Tip of the hat to the professor. Despite being Fogerty's most successful solo single, it was not without controversy. You see, Saul Zaentz, the owner of Fantasy Records, claimed that The Old Man Down the Road shared the same chorus as Run Through the Jungle, a song from Fogerty's CCR days. Now, Fogerty had relinquished the copyrights and publishing rights of his CCR songs to Zaentz and Fantasy in exchange for release from his contractual obligations to them. Therefore, Zaentz sued in the case of Fantasy Inc. versus Fogerty, but the defendant Fogerty ultimately prevailed when he showed that the two songs were whole, separate, and distinct compositions, going as far as to even bring his guitar to the witness stand where he played excerpts from both songs, demonstrating that many songwriters, himself included, have distinctive styles that can make different compositions sound similar to less disconcerting ears. After prevailing as the defendant, Fogerty asked the court to require Zaentz to pay for the attorney fees that he had to spend in order to defend himself against the copyright infringement claim. In such copyright cases, the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit required prevailing defendants seeking recompense to show that the original suit was frivolous or made in bad faith. In this case, Fogerty versus Fantasy Inc. became precedent when the United States Supreme Court overturned lower court rulings and decided that Fogerty could be awarded the attorney's fees without having to show that Zaentz's original suit was frivolous. The lower courts then decided that Fogerty should be awarded his attorney fees, which totaled about $1,347,519.15. Track 2 was the second single from the album, Rock and Roll Girls, which was released in March of 1985. Now, according to Fogerty, Rock and Roll Girls was inspired by watching his teenage daughter and her friends hanging out. He referred to them as Rock and Roll Girls, so that the song title referenced them rather than groupies who the term might also refer to. He said it was about how teenagers have their very own world and they don't tell their parents about it. It illustrates those last days of innocence. Music critic James Perrone says that the song creates impressions of love, pop music, and the beautiful young women of presumably the 60s. According to ultimate classic rock critic Brian Wozniak, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, Rock and Roll Girls starts out seeming like it'll be a typical 1980s song that glorifies rock and roll music. But then there's a twist. He says, and the lyrics then speak to the mystery of pop music itself, how it became a secret handshake between friends, the soundtrack to a memory that means everything. Now, although less successful on the charts than The Old Man Down the Road, Rock and Roll Girls was still able to reach the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, peaking at the number 20 position. It did perform better on Billboard's mainstream rock charts, where it ended up peaking at number 5, as well as in Canada, where it reached number 16, and Austria, where it actually cracked the top 10 by peaking at number 10. Now, going back to the lawsuit for just a moment, Fogerty actually used Rock and Roll Girls as well as Centerfield as an example of how songs evolve in his defense in the lawsuit. Fogerty used progressive versions of Rock and Roll Girls as it was being developed to demonstrate how many blues songs are similar because they are based on the same 5-note pentatonic scale, but they incorporate small variations. In my opinion, it's an infectious rock song with driving guitar and pounding drums and even some 80s saxophone, all of which were provided by Fogerty himself. Track 3, The Big Train from Memphis, was actually the B-side for The Old Man Down the Road, and it's a standard rockabilly tune designed to be a tribute to the Sun Records label. Now, Sun Records, of course, is the record label where artists like Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash all found fame before moving on to bigger and better record labels. Perkins, Presley, Cash, and Jerry Lee even make up the legendary $1 Million Quartet. Fogerty wrote most of Centerfield in his blue Land Cruiser, but it was not easy to find a place where he could write alone without people staring at him. So then he got an idea to park his car between two other vehicles at the El Cerrito Plaza or in front of somebody's house. He listened to music, smoked a couple of cigars, pulled out his notebook, and wrote. And the melody of the song, to me, gives off Folsom Prison Blues vibes. The Johnny Cash song, which incidentally originally was recorded on July 30th, 1955, and released as the B-side of So Doggone Lonesome on Sun Records on December 15th of the same year. John Fogerty went fishing to the San Pablo Reservoir in El Sobrante, located in the East Bay area of California, in the spring of 1984. While fishing, he started to think about the things that he's seen on TV as a young boy. The Eisenhower inauguration, the Yankees, the Mickey Mouse Club, Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show, etc. And the result was a song encapsulating 30 years of American history as witnessed by baby boomers through a television screen. I Saw It on TV, which is track 4 on the album. Fogerty regarded it as his first finished piece since 1973. The song was voted as the 7th best song of the entire solo career of Fogerty in an internet survey taken in 1999 and 2005. Despite its popularity with fans, I Saw It on TV has been a rare number in concerts. As a matter of fact, after the 25th anniversary version of Centerfield was released in the summer of 2010, Fogerty played I Saw It on TV in only 3 shows later that autumn. At the Borgata Spa and Resort in Atlantic City, New Jersey on September 11th, at the Auditorium Theater in Rochester, New York on September 14th, and at the Casino Rama in Orillia, Ontario, Canada on September 15th. Lean, clean, and bluesy, Fogerty managed to take a subtle swipe at both Watergate and the Vietnam conflict in the same line and not appear preachy. The reprise of Who'll Stop the Rain at the end of the song is a classic device reminiscent of the Beatles reprising She Loves You at the end of All You Need Is Love. Now for track 5's Mr. Greed, UK publication The Guardian stated on February 14th, 1985, that the song is a solid rocker with a solid riff that shows how Fogerty's influence spread over to the more melodic side of heavy metal. Critic Matt Lowen would say that the track is one of his favorite songs on the album because it is so raw and powerful. The Syrian guitar licks are superb, as are Fogerty's throaty vocals. I have to wonder who is worse, Mr. Greed or his mother, who taught him everything he knows. However, not all the critics seemed to echo those sentiments. As a matter of fact, Jim Miller at Newsweek magazine said on February 18th, 1985, that some of Fogerty's lyrics are labored, Mr. Greed, for example, is an uncharacteristic rant. What's missing in part is a sense of the contemporary context. While Classic Rock Review said on July 28th, 2015, that Mr. Greed doesn't quite work as well as some of the other songs, featuring a pure hard rock riff with heavy guitar interludes in between the lines and sophomoric lyrics. Now, personally, I like the rocking guitars on the track. It's enough to get the toes tapping along to it. And sometimes that's all you need for a song. The inspiration for track 6 on the album, which is entitled Searchlight, came from a trip to Lake Havasu on the Arizona-California border. While driving down the highway, Fogerty saw a road sign that read, Searchlight 9 miles. So he wrote that down in the book. In his 2015 autobiography, Fogerty would go on to explain, it was also one of those first thing in the morning inspirations. I remember playing it on my guitar in the studio and going to that place where you concentrate and relax at the same time. I hit this swampy, mournful chord. Oh, the midnight, need a searchlight. Music critic Glenn J. Weiner said of the song that Searchlight is, quote, another song of John admitting his vulnerability. A good haunting rhythm keeps me hooked. I could do without the electronic drums, though. I personally completely agree about the electronic drums. Kind of takes you out of the track a little bit, just ever so slightly. Thankfully, the guitars and the horn section make up for it. Classic Rock Review said, Searchlight is a more interesting track which blends classic blues and bayou country along with some Motown elements, all under a heavy rock vocal and drum beat. I can definitely feel where they're coming from with the blues, country, Motown comparisons. It's one of the things that makes the track stand out from the rest of the album. Now, track 7 is the title track from the album, and to my recollection, it was my introduction to John Fogerty. Centerfield. The song was originally the B-side to Rock and Roll Girls, and it combines two of Fogerty's passions, baseball and rock and roll. Fogerty once said that he was nervous about its reception, as over the years it seemed like sports songs just didn't qualify into the rock and roll lexicon. There was that unwritten distinction. It was never considered rock and roll, which is ironic because the song is now commonly played at baseball games across the United States. In fact, Centerfield is a fixture at ballparks of all levels, frequently played either when teams take the field or in between innings. According to Fogerty, he drew his inspiration from Centerfield at Yankee Stadium. You see, when he was growing up on the West Coast, there was no major league team to root for. The Los Angeles Dodgers were originally founded as the Brooklyn Grays in 1883, and they would go through a number of name changes, including the Atlantics, the Bridegrooms, the Grooms, the Superbas, the Trolley Dodgers, and the Robins, before finally settling on the Dodgers in 1932. And they would be the Brooklyn Dodgers from 1932 to 1957, until they relocated to Los Angeles, California, prior to the 1958 season. The San Francisco Giants were founded in 1883 as the New York Gothams. That team would eventually be renamed the New York Giants and then became the San Francisco Giants upon their move to California, again just prior to the 1958 ball season. The San Diego Padres weren't even established until 1969. So the closest thing his area had to a team was the New York Yankees, which had San Francisco native Joe DiMaggio as a part of their roster. Fogerty said, "When I was a little kid, there were no teams on the West Coast, so the idea of a major league team was really mythical to me. Through my own lore, the way I was kind of filtering this faraway dream, it seemed that was the coolest place. The number one guy seemed to be a center fielder, and he seemed to play in Yankee Stadium." The song was also inspired by his frustration of watching a struggling team on television where he would imagine himself to be a rookie sitting on a bench. Quote, "I would always yell at the television, 'Put me in, coach, put me in.'" Baseball legends mentioned in the song include DiMaggio, Willie Mays, and Ty Cobb, all of whom are center fielders. Fogerty even quoted a line from Chuck Berry's Brown-Eyed Handsome Man in the first verse, where he says, "Rounding third, he was heading for home." In a radio interview with Dan Patrick on October 8th, 2015, Fogerty mentioned that he always pictured Jackie Robinson as the brown-eyed handsome man who was rounding third and headed for home. The second verse refers to Casey of the Mudville Nine from the poem Casey at the Bat, and the final verse of the song quotes longtime Oakland Athletics and San Francisco Giants broadcaster Lon Simmons, whose home run call was "Tell it goodbye." The line, "Don't say it ain't so," references Shoeless Joe Jackson and the Black Sox scandal involving 8 Chicago White Sox players and the 1919 World Series. Jackson and the scandal are the subject of the 1988 film 8 Men Out, where D.B. Sweeney portrays Shoeless Joe, but the most famous depiction is probably that by Ray Liotta in the Kevin Costner film Field of Dreams. The song Centerfield plays continuously at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, and on July 25th, 2010, Fogerty actually performed it at the induction ceremonies of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown in order to commemorate the song's 25th anniversary, with Willie Mays in attendance. It was the first time a musician or a song has been celebrated as part of the festivities. After completing the song, Fogerty announced that he was donating the baseball bat-shaped guitar that he used only for this song to the Hall of Fame. Critic Matt Lowen said, "Forget Take Me Out to the Ball Game. This song, Centerfield, is the quintessential baseball song." It's also perhaps my favorite John Fogerty song, but at least definitely in the top 3. I can't say enough great things about the song. The rollicking guitar, the happy, joyous lyrics, the hand clapping, the organ appearing at the right times, and more. And I can't agree more with Matt. As I said, I believe this was my introduction to Fogerty. The music video in rotation on MTV, and yours truly, a frantic Los Angeles Dodgers fan at the time in my younger years, going as far as to have the team lineups laid out on my floor via my then extensive baseball card collection, bringing each card up to home plate as they would step up the bat, and moving the card to their respective bases as they progressed around the diamond. Track 8 on the album is a thematic follow-up to the previous song, as both numbers illustrate the excitement of an artist who's looking forward to his comeback after several silent years. Electronic drums once again dominate the sound sphere of this lively number, perhaps more than any of the other songs on Centerfield. After watching the baseball all-star game at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, California, on the second week of July in 1984, Fogerty booked the Plant Studios in Sausalito, California, and recorded I Can't Help Myself, along with the songs I Saw It on TV, Searchlight, The Old Man Down the Road, Rock and Roll Girls, and the album's original closing track, which we'll get to momentarily. Zans Can't Dance. Once again, the critics targeted the electronic drums on the track as both Matt Lowen and Glenn J. Weiner had something to say about it. Matt Lowen would say that, quote, for the most part, the background music is very subdued and simple, but you hardly notice because of Fogerty's evocative vocals. One very minor complaint, the drums during the central music break sound far too synthetic and electronic. Still, a great song to move to. While Glenn J. Weiner said that, quote, this song features an excellent vocal delivery and a solid backbeat. But John, you need to lose the electronic drums here. I can definitely agree to what they're saying about the electronic drums once again. I feel like they're very much overdone here. It's one thing to use electronic drums or even beat machines. Hip-hop music has been doing it for years. However, it feels like Fogerty bought a brand new toy and wanted to show it off to the world. I'm not sure that was necessary here. And the final track of the original album is another controversial song as it resulted in another lawsuit for Fogerty. Originally titled Zans Can't Dance, the song was written in the aftermath of the Hoodoo album from 1976. Elektra/Asylum head Joe Smith had called Fogerty after rejecting the album, and Fogerty was telling him about his troubles with his former label. Smith mentioned how the Kinks had written a song about some guy who screwed them, and they got it out of their frustrations and their system that way. As Fogerty went to hang up the phone, the words Zans Can't Dance popped into his head. He ran to his studio and wrote it down. In 1985, Saul Zaentz, the boss of Fantasy Records, which owns the distribution and publishing rights to the music of Creedence Clearwater Revival, brought a series of lawsuits against John Fogerty, including a character defamation suit citing Zans Can't Dance and Mr. Greed. Zaentz won some of his claims against Fogerty, but lost on the copyright issue, which we already discussed when we covered The Old Man Down the Road at the beginning of the episode. Now, musically, Can't Dance stands out from the rest of the material on Centerfield. It has a quasi-reggae beat and almost 1 minute long instrumental break that is dominated by electronic drums. You can definitely sense the frustration from Fogerty within the lyrics of the song here. I would almost put it in the same category as Only a Northern Song or Piggies, both of which are George Harrison-penned Beatles songs. Zans Can't Dance, like Only a Northern Song, both display a frustration over the respective situations, and can even be considered what modern-day music fans would refer to as a diss track, while Piggies has the same level of aggression in the lyrical delivery that Zans Can't Dance possesses. Except Piggies is more of an anti-cop song. There were 2 additional songs added to the 25th anniversary pressing of the Centerfield album, and we're going to go ahead and discuss those now. First up is Fogerty's cover of the rockin' Sidney Simeon song, My Toot Toot. Originally released as the B-side of the Change in the Weather single in November of 1986, Fogerty had visited the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in late April, early May of 1985. Saw Rockin' Sidney perform the number. He liked the song so much that he immediately wanted to record it. So he traveled to Crawley, Louisiana, and cut it right then and there together with Rockin' Sydney. In fact, it has the distinction of being the first recording during his solo career when Fogerty didn't play everything by himself. My Toot Toot was actually considered to be the B-side of the Vans Can't Dance single, but since it was never released on a commercial 45 RPM disc, that ended up not coming to fruition. It's also been rumored that another Rockin' Sydney song titled Zydeco's Shoes Got the Zydeco Blues was recorded during the My Toot Toot sessions at Master Track Studios. But the song has never been released, so nobody except for Rockin' Sydney or John really know if it even exists. Now, My Toot Toot is another infectious, toe-tapping, hand-clapping ditty that stays in your head long after it ends. The last bonus track is entitled I Confess, which is a 1960s R&B doo-wop song written by Teddy Van and Nathaniel Nathan and originally recorded in December of 1962. I Confess served as the B-side of Fogerty's Eye of the Zombie single, which was released in August of 1986. Greg Yost of Country Standard Time said in 2010, although I Confess and My Toot Toot are welcome additions to the Fogerty catalog, they stray from the content and the quality of the album's original 9 tracks, which are the real stars of this reissue. I kind of echo the sentiment as far as I Confess goes. Well, I do enjoy it, don't get me wrong, and I feel like it's got some great instrumentation, especially the organ. I do feel like it stands out from the rest of the album. This is the first time I have heard this entire album all the way through. For the majority of the 40 years that it's been out there for consumption, I really only ever knew and listened to the singles. Rock and Roll Girls, The Old Man Down the Road, and Centerfield. Legal troubles aside, I feel like this album really stands the test of time. And with the exception of some of the electronic drums, it really still holds up to this day. I give it a 7 out of 10. What do you guys think? Is that too high, too low? Are you fans of the album? Or, like me, did you only really know the singles? The Old Man Down the Road, Rock and Roll Girls, and Centerfield. Let me know. Leave those comments down below, and let's engage in some fun banter about the universal language, music. That's going to wrap up today's Albumverseary review, where we go track by track on albums that are celebrating an anniversary. Tip of the hat to John Fogerty Centerfield. Until next time, when we celebrate another Albumverseary. I am the Renegade J.J. Williams, thanking y'all for joining me. I'll catch you guys next time.